Hi, I'm Gwen and I'm the past president of Michigan Parents of Children with Visual Impairments, and I'm the current OEB Director, Opportunities Unlimited for the Blind. We operate summer camps on the west side of Grand Rapids for children who are blind or low vision. At our summer camps, we teach lots of skills that sometimes are hard for parents to teach, and so I'm going to show you a couple of those things that we do today. One of the things that is important to understand is that not every tool works for every child. Some of our tools work really well for blind children, some of them work better for low vision kids, and some of them just don't work at all. Some of the tools that don't work, in my opinion and my experience with my son who's now 26, is that the tomato slicer thing just doesn't work. And it's really hard for the kids to figure out where to use the knife and how to slice through those things. I don't have one currently with me, but if you know what I'm talking about, you'll probably understand that it just doesn't work for our kids. Another thing that doesn't work very well is an egg separator. Our kids really need to get their hands on the egg in order to feel the yolk and to separate the yolk from the white, and so they just need to use their whole hands. In fact, these are their best tools, their hands. So everything that you can figure out for them to do with their hands works much better than trying to use tools. That includes measuring spoons. For measuring spoons, we sometimes like to bend these cheap versions so that they can dip the items that they need, oil or vinegar or vanilla, out of a jar. But another way to do this, if you're using powdered ingredients, is just to take the spoon, put it in their hand so that they can feel how much volume that takes, and then have them put the item in their hand, especially if it's a powder like a spice or something like chopped onions. If they only need a tablespoon of chopped onions, then you'll know that that's this much. So that's a whole palmful for them. And a lot of times measurements aren't as precisely required as what you would think. Sometimes you can put in a teaspoon, you can put in a teaspoon and a half, and it really won't make much difference to the recipe. So I just encourage you to let your kids explore using their hands instead of having to use tools all the time. Although for liquids, obviously, you're going to have to use a spoon of some sort to grab oil or vanilla out of a jar. These are really the best ways to do this, because otherwise they have no idea if they've reached the top and it starts to spill out all over the place. Another thing that's really helpful in the kitchen is a chopper. These are really great for onions. You do have to cut them into smaller pieces so that they fit inside. But this is just the base. You don't need the base to work it. So you can put this on a cutting board, pretend my hand is a cutting board, and this has a blade on it that you push down and it rotates so that you can chop a whole bunch of stuff in a short amount of time. This is great for meatloaf, for cutting things small like onions, celery, carrots into small bits, and this is one of my son's favorite tools. There are other ways to learn, there are other ways to learn to chop too with knives, and we're going to do that in another video to show you how to use knife skills. Another thing that's helpful when you're trying to use a knife or to chop things is a tool something like this. I'm not sure what it's called, but this one's made by Pampered Chef, and it's very sharp, so your kids have to be careful when they're using it. But they can use it to stab a vegetable, to hold it still while they're trying to cut it into slices. And you can also slice through the spines on this tool too, to get lengthwise cuts in your vegetables if that's what you need. A tool that I think is like the best thing ever is a garlic press. Our kids really have difficulty cutting up really small things like garlic, and they have difficulty getting the peels off garlic as well. This takes care of both things. You can put a garlic with some of the peel on it still right in the hopper here and press it and squeeze it right into your dish, whatever you're making. You can squeeze it into your saucepan, into your skillet, into a bowl, and your garlic is already chopped and well done. There are lots of people who say garlic presses are terrible, but those are kind of like high-end restaurant type chefs that don't care for the way the garlic comes out. But really for home cooking, this thing really works really well. Another tool that is really difficult for our kids to learn to use, but it's really valuable if they do learn it, and this is where the little holder thing will come in handy, is to using a microplane or a box grater. These things are super sharp. It's super easy to cut yourself on these. I've had kids cut themselves on them at camp a lot of times because you just get too close to the blade and you end up scraping your knuckles. And so kids have to pay attention. They have to check frequently to see how close they are. Remember that you're not going to cut yourself if you're going gently at something and you're not moving against the blade. So they can feel this without cutting themselves. And that's the same is true for this tool. You can feel the end is sharp without cutting yourself if you're careful and you're gentle about it. So we encourage our kids to use very gentle movements to explore all of their tools before they try and use them. Another tool that's really helpful is a palm peeler. Now these things look really weird, but you put it on your middle finger, or some people put it on their ring finger, and the blade is inside it so that they can palm the whole vegetable this way, and they can feel the vegetable better than trying to use a handheld blade with a handle on it, one of those that has a handle, or any other of the peelers that are available on the market. These things really work well for our kids to use. If peeling vegetables is your thing, in my house we just don't bother to peel them most of the time, but when you do need to peel them, this is a great tool. And they're actually readily available at places like, well, I think I got this one at Meijer actually. And another tool that you can get through your TCVI usually, or some other program that has devices for blind children, is a Braille timer. This one has actually hit the floor a bunch of times. You can see it's broken in places, but it is still a really valuable tool, and we're really grateful to have it. All the numbers are in Braille along the edges of the frame, and he can move that to whatever side he needs. Now, most of our kids that are older are using their phones as timers now, but for your younger kids, this is a really great tool. For some of our things in our kitchen, we need to label things, and that includes ovens and microwaves. And the easiest way to do that is with a Braille labeler. You should try and get one of these. They're only about 20 bucks. They don't work terribly well a lot of the time, so you have to struggle with them, and I'm sorry about that. But it's just like a Dymo labeler, and what you need to try and do so that everyone else in your house has some sanity is to label things with clear label tape. This is available through a company in London, I believe, or there may be someone in the United States that is now manufacturing this tape. But clear label tape means that you can label over the printed labels on your microwave or on your oven without obscuring the printed label, while still giving your blind child or your low vision child some texture to identify the numbers that they're wanting to use on the microwave. We have these on our microwaves at camp and on our stove, and we have them here at my house. We have dots on our oven. These are furniture dots or cabinet bumpers that you can buy. They're actually just called bumpers. These happen to be 1/2 inch, and they're silicone, so they're clear, so they don't really interfere with how things look to you, but your child can still find them on the tool that they're trying to use. Another thing you can use are felt furniture dots. These are also bumpers to keep things from scratching furniture surfaces. There are small ones, there are bigger ones, and yeah, more bigger ones. And another tool you can use to create a surface that's textural is our wiki sticks. I like to use these for maps, but they can also be used in the kitchen service. Because they're wax, they stick to stuff, and you can make a dot, you can make anything you want out of these, and they stay like that. So they're a really great tool as well. If worse comes to worse and you don't have any other options, hot glue always works. And there's also a product called High Marks, and you can mark almost any surface with this. I have an interesting story that there's a couple I know that both of them are blind, and they had hired a housekeeper, and the housekeeper kept scrubbing these dots off of their stove and their oven because she thought they were dirt instead of that they were valuable tools for them to use their stove and their oven. So they had to explain that to their housekeeper not to do that anymore. In case you're interested in how to do clothing, although this video doesn't really address clothing at all, These are braille labels that you can put in clothing. You just sew them into the neck, and they have the color of the clothing on the label, and that helps your child choose their own clothing instead of you always having to try and figure out what your kids should wear today. I used to choose all of Greg's clothes for him, and then I discovered that he could do it himself, and then that was a great relief for me, because even if he did go to school looking a little odd, at least he was doing it himself, and I was happy about that. So let's look at our oven here for a minute. Our video's coming over to see it. We have several different kinds of dots on this oven. So the oven light has a dot that is a felt dot, but the dot that we use to turn on the oven and the cancel button are both in a silicone dot. And then the up button to change the temperature is a felt dot, and the lower one is a silicone dot. And then on the other side for the second oven are the same, but a different shape than the ones on the top oven. And Greg just had to learn which dots went to what thing so that he could use those. We don't use most of the rest of the dots, or else I use them because that's the clean function, and he doesn't have to worry about that. So these are the things that he learned from the beginning on how to use our oven. The other thing that you need to remember when you're using the oven is to have them explore it while it's cold, so that they can tell what the shelves are, that they can figure out how to move the shelves, and that they find out where the burner is. The first time my son tried to get something out of the oven, he was exploring and he did not have a glove on, and oh my gosh, he hit the underside of the burner while it was hot, and that hurts a lot. That's much hotter than hitting the rack itself. So the best tools actually for using the oven are going to be these. These are UV gloves, and they are designed so that you have gloves so that you can use your fingers, as well as you're protecting both the underside and the top side and your fingers, so that you can grab something and pull it out and get it out of the oven without damaging yourself. And if you're searching for that rack and you hit the burner, it's not going to hurt you. You'll know that you hit the rack because it's not shaped right, but that's why it's important to do this with the oven cold, so that your child knows what the burner's shaped like, because that's different than the racks are shaped. And also make sure that they explore for the bottom burner as well, so that they know where that is. And over here we have our microwave, and you can see that we've used braille dots, braille labels, so that this is a number 1, this is a number 2, this is a number 3. And so Greg can find this he can just do a 2-5, and then he's got 25 seconds, and then he knows where the start button is, and the stop button, and the power button, so he can change the power on it. And the 1-minute button is also labeled with a braille label. Okay. I think the one thing that I forgot to show you was the measuring cups. So we're going to go backwards a little bit here. This one's lost its handle because it's been used so much, but this is the best thing ever. These are OXO Good Grips measuring cups that have a ridge inside. These were designed so that people could pour liquids in and see from the top, rather than having to hold it up like this where their liquid was, so that you can see where the inside is. The ridge here is marked in quarter, third, half, 3/4, 2/3, 3/4 in 1 cup. But it turns out that if you take high marks like this and mark those lines like that, that your child can find out where a half mark is. They just have to remember that there's a quarter, there's a third, and then there's half. And then they can pour milk, they can pour oil, they can pour anything that they can feel the difference in temperature into this cup and know that they have the right amount, because they can feel the top of the liquid right along where the top of the dot is, or the mark is on the inside of this ridge. This works. There's little ones for tablespoons, actually. We don't have this one marked yet, but we will probably someday. This one is a 1 cup measure, and it's marked. And this one is a 4 cup measure, and that's marked also. Now, sometimes on the 4 cup measures, we'll only mark the 1, 2, 3, and 4 cups on it. This one happens to be marked in most of them. But you have to make sure that your child can remember what those marks mean, because there's no space to actually label them very well. So, but this is a really great way to do things. We make a lot of bread in our house, and Greg has used this 4-cup measure to measure water for bread a lot, and he's actually a very good cook. I can say I can have a little bit to do with that. So I'm very proud of the fact that he can cook for himself, and he is currently living in Lansing on his own. He's learned many skills, some of them because I taught them, and some of them because his O&M teacher and his VI teachers have taught him those things. And it's been a real journey, but it is something that's completely doable. Your child can learn how to do these things, and it's important to remember that just because they can't do it today doesn't mean they won't be able to do it tomorrow. So I hope you enjoyed this video and look forward to the next one. Thank you. Bye.